Patti, we are thrilled that you're with us today. Thank you so much for joining us on Head to Head.
Oh, it is my pleasure, Kirsten and Ryan. What an honor it is to be on your show.
Thank you. Well, we're excited. We have to know. We have to start with asking the obvious. How did you go from a career with no previous financial background to becoming one of the top financial advisors in the country and number one in Pennsylvania?
You know, it's kind of funny. I didn't realize it at the time, but actually not having a financial background actually worked in my favor because, let's face it, this stuff can be really complicated, overwhelming, and I just figured if I could break things down so that a nurse like me could understand them, maybe I could help other people to understand some of the most important concepts. And that's really all I've done, is to really be transparent. It is important to have substance. It is very important to have substance because I think people can read right through that. And at the same point, it doesn't have to be overly complicated because then people just they get overwhelmed with it, and then they can't make a decision that ultimately is in their best interest. I often say that, God forbid if you or someone that you love is really sick, who's that person that you can trust?
Right.
It is the nurse at the bedside who knows everything about that patient. It's the same thing with financial planners. So nurses advocate, so do financial planners.
Great.
That's what we do.
Absolutely. I bet so many of those training qualities from being a nurse really has helped you be so successful.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting as I think back to my career and I think back to what I used to do in oncology and then in intensive care. Like you think about it, you got to know everything about that whole patient, not just the organs, not just the heart or the lungs or the kidneys. Got to know their labs. You got to know what their x-rays just showed because the doctors are coming in and they want the answers, they want them fast. And then the family's coming in. And we have to explain things. A good nurse is going to be able to explain things in a way that the patient and their family can understand. So it's kind of like what I do today, right?
I was just going to say your description of your past life sounds very similar to what a financial advisor does today. So you just described in very clear terms what your life used to be like and how you have now implemented it into your daily practice.
Absolutely. And we all know fantastic advisors out there who are great when things are going well, but they're even better during crisis, right? And that's when you can really separate the cream from the crop. And that's really that training that I had when patients were crashing. Isn't that weird? I just called them clients. That's it. Sometimes that mentality, never leaves me. And there are crises, whether it could be, things over which none of us have any control, we can't predict. Same thing with, the bedside. We don't know. I don't know when a patient's going to crash. We don't know what that x-ray is going to show. What we do know is what to do when it happens.
Right. What do you do as an advisor today? Because you said something there that's important that I would like to dig in on about a crisis situation. I'm sure clients come in all the time with a crisis situation, or maybe just the market is causing a crisis situation. As an advisor, how do you talk to your clients about that?
Ryan, it's a great question because there are different types of crises. And again, it's unique to each client. It could be a job loss. It could be somebody got a diagnosis. It could be, geez, I lost 20% last year. What does that really mean to my financial future? That is a crisis to them, and it's scary. So long ago, someone once taught me this concept of feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. For whatever it's worth, there are a lot of other people who have felt the way you're feeling right now. And what you'll find is A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Right? So you get on their level and you understand truly. It's got to be sincere. It's got to be authentic. You can't fake stuff like that. It is scary. So understand where they're coming from. Help them to realize that they're not alone. And then help them also to understand that you've been through it before, you know what to do. We got this.
Absolutely. We talked about this early on. We were having our conversation this week. So much about what you do is like being a psychologist, like having a couch in your office, right? And it makes me think about just financial advisors in general, and something so unique about you is you incorporate the whole family. You incorporate the spouse oftentimes too, if the driver of the investments is the man. And you're
Absolutely.
very, very focused on that. And I think that really helps you to stand out in a crowd. Any advice you would give to other financial advisors or those that are trying to come into the space, and incorporating the whole family or incorporating both the spouses?
Kirsten, it's a great question because I will tell you that I have seen other advisors in meetings where they hyper focus on the one person, the decision maker. Typically, we think of it as the husband, but it's not always the husband.
Right.
I was in a meeting recently, and it was, the wife, and that person was hyper focusing on the wife, and that husband felt excluded.
Mm-hmm.
Not okay.
Yeah.
Okay? Not okay. You've got to make both parties, everyone feel that they are as important as they truly are. And you got to believe that. That's going to come through verbally as well as non-verbally.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I often tell clients is there will be a point in time, because let me just take a step back. When we take on a client, when I accept a client for the long haul, and I can explain to you our business model at another time, but I don't accept every client by any stretch. But when I do, we're in it forever, for life. Okay?
Wow.
And that's important that they know that. And the way that I explain it is I say, there will be a point in time when I'm sitting at this conference table with one of you.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it matters.
That's a game changer comment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's true because let's face it, that's what people worry about. And even the decision maker, if it is the husband or the wife, the decision maker needs to hear that because they want to make sure that the person that they've been wedded to for 40 or 50 years, that they'll be as well taken care of after they're gone as right now. And it is our duty, it's my duty, our fiduciary duty, to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that that person knows that things will continue seamlessly.
That's powerful, Patti. I mean, that saying that on the onset, it's absolutely a game changer.
And that really resonates for me. Kirsten knows this, but I lost my father in October. And my mom and dad weren't wealthy people, but my dad was a planner and he had a life insurance policy. And overnight, my mom had $700,000, but she's intimidated by numbers. She's scared of money. And the idea that, to your exact comment about someday there's only going to be one person sitting at this table, makes me want my mom to talk to you.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And it's really understanding that, especially for what your mom is going through right now, because, she's in that fourth phase of retirement for many people. In retirement, there's 4 phases. And basically, she's in that solo phase now. And that's so scary because there's so many decisions that she's got to make. What is she going to do? How is she going to manage all this money? And how is she going to do so responsibly? Making sure that, it's a stewardship, right? And everybody wants different things with that $700,000. So a good advisor, you, Ryan, are going to sit down and say, hey, Mom, what is most important to you?
Sure.
As it relates to this money? What are you thinking about? What do you aspire to? You don't think that a widow would have aspirations? Ryan, let me be the first to tell you, your mom has aspirations. Let's find out what they are. And then also find out, what is she worried about? Because then, armed with that information, you're going to make much better decisions.
Can we talk a little bit about sort of the entrepreneurship of starting your own business? So, there are a lot of advisors in the country. They may be under an umbrella of somebody else, but somewhere along the lines, you decided to open your own business, Key Financial, and it's been incredibly successful. Can you talk a little bit about your decision-making process to do that?
Sure. So,
or maybe some of the challenges involved in that. to me, I'm just always fascinated by entrepreneurs, and it would seem to me that would be a scary thing, but yet you guys have done an amazing job, and we'd love to hear about that.
Sure. So, first of all, I almost didn't have a choice. Sometimes you do things out of, inspiration or desperation. In my case, it was out of desperation. And by that, I mean, let's go back. I went into the industry in 1985, got my CFP, was working at the time straight commission, commuting back and forth into Philadelphia. I had a baby at home. The stock market crashed in 1987. It was early in January of 1988. We moved into our home after having just put everything we had into the down payment. And then Ed lost his job. No one wanted to do financial planning. Nobody wanted to work with me. Here I am, barely 30 years old. So we had a brand new mortgage and, basically no income coming in and debt up to our eyeballs. The equivalent of, in today's dollars, I did the math, about $100,000 in outside debt, credit cards and that kind of stuff. So what did I do? What did we do? Ed stayed home and watched the baby, and I went back to nursing. And I worked 12-hour shifts as a nurse on weekends. And I would get dressed. I'd, finish my shift at 7:30 in the morning, get in my suit, get in my car, drive into Philadelphia to be a financial planner, feeling like a complete fraud. Because I was. And it was only in that process of, again, desperation that I learned how to dig myself out, dig Ed and I out of that debt and get to that point. Now, there were some pivotal moments, Ryan and Kirsten.
I'm sure.
Lots of pivotal moments. I could talk all day about some of them. Probably one of the biggest ones was in 1990 when, a couple years into that, I got to tell you, the problem didn't get solved overnight. It was hard as anything, and we continued to grind it out. And I had some wonderful opportunities that were presented to me. And I went to the principal of my firm. And at the time, he had made a decision to go and really hyper-focus on portfolio management only. And they were going with a $1 million minimum. True story. And here I am, just barely 30, right? That's equivalent to $5 million today. And I went in and I said, Roy, I got to tell you, I've been presented this wonderful opportunity, full salary, company car, great benefits. I think I'm going to take it. And he did, it's interesting. There are people in my life, Roy being one of them, who have taught me so much. To me, working with Roy was the best tuition I ever paid.
Sure.
The best. Because I learned so much. Here is a man who knew how to influence with integrity. He didn't, try to talk me out of it. He didn't try to do that. He just started to ask me questions. What was it that made you take those phone calls? Why did you go to those interviews? What exactly were you looking for at the time? And so after the conversation, he said, asked me about the opportunities, and I was talking about it, and he stopped me dead cold and said, Patti, he said, you should never work for anybody. Don't take those jobs. Here's what I think you should do. Start your own firm. He said, you've got great ideas. I understand you want to still do the real financial planning. You can do that. And we'll back you up for a fee, of course. They, received a portion of my revenue. Again, I looked at it as tuition. And they supported me. And there are many moments, our careers are just a bunch of moments. It's like time with our kids. Our kids are, time with our kids are like moments, right? And to really be open and embrace those moments, you just never know when those pearls of wisdom are going to come about.
Right.
So that's when it started. Again, that's, I started it out of my laundry room.
That's great.
Crazy stories, but true.
Your stories I can resonate with. They honestly give me the chills. Like it's inspiring. It really, really is.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I hope that you are sharing that story with a lot of younger kids because it's just uplifting. It tells them that they can do anything. But I wanted to ask you, I wanted to dive into that a little bit. You know, our
Sure.
podcast is about getting personal with the people of financial services, the best of the best, thought leaders like yourself. And, you know, Ryan has 3 kids. I have 3 kids. You have 4 kids.
Yeah.
You're the CEO of your own company. You have 30 employees, colleagues. How do you find balance? How do you do it all? It's so hard.
I think for me, I think the key for me was to recognize that it's okay that there are going to be times when I'm not going to be balanced, right? I'm just
Do you believe balance exists?
Well, you know, it's very interesting. You know, it kind of reminds me of that Jack Welch quote. You know,
That's my favorite quote.
It is my favorite quote too. You know, it's work-life choices.
Yep.
You know, basically what Jack Welch said was, you know, work-life balance really doesn't exist. It's work-life choices with consequences.
That's right.
So it is. So there were periods of time when my tire was completely lopsided. I had work and I had my family. I had no social life. There was no spiritual life. That was it. And so I had to get creative. For example, when my kids were little, I didn't have any outside life. And I realized, Ed and I were talking, I said, you know, I'm not really setting a very good example for our kids. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, you know, we should do some volunteer work, whatever. So long story short, I volunteered to teach CCD at church. And basically what I did was I took one of my kids every Monday night, and they were my student teacher. So I had one-on-one time with my kids, with each child, made them feel really important. It empowered them to be in front of a classroom, and I was giving back to the community. So sometimes you just have to think outside the box and be creative.
So, Patti, we were talking about kids, and I've got, as Kirsten said a second ago, 3 kids of my own, one of which, you know, is getting ready for college. And we're having lots of conversations about what college will be like, and then after college, what that will be like. So as you think about young people, what advice do you give them about this industry?
Okay, so Ryan, let me just punt this back to you and answer your question with a question.
Okay.
Tell me more about your daughter and the conversations that you're having with your daughter and the pressure she might be feeling to make a decision.
Well, she's 18, so you know, I think she's mature enough to understand that she's got some time to figure it out. But I come home and tell her all the time about Kirsten and about this industry and about how people like yourself, frankly, are in the minority, where there aren't as many women in this industry. And I look at my daughter and I think my experience has been, and you've sort of illustrated this during our conversation, that this business is really a lot about relationships and about communication. And I think she's good at that. So have I thought about or pushed her towards potentially doing that, letting her make her own decisions? I have. So that would be my answer to your question is just about her and about potentially being in this industry.
You know, what I've learned with my 4 kids and with so many of our clients' children, because a lot of times we meet with those children of our clients to kind of give them this kind of counseling and exposure. And first and foremost, I think we have to get rid of the myths out there. There is a myth that if you're looking into financial services, you have to be good at math.
Right.
That's what my daughters think.
Right. So let me just be the first to tell you, I stink at math. I am terrible at math. And also, that's what calculators and computers are here for. You don't have to be good at math. In fact, the opposite. I think sometimes when people get too much into the weeds like that, they lose sight of what's really important to the person that they're sitting with. Right. I think that your point about your daughter's ability to communicate is everything. And, you know, we grow. We grow with exposure to different fields. I mean, let's face it, there's so many different areas in financial services where you can excel. Sure, you could be an advisor, or you could work for the companies that come into people like me and talk about what they do and what they provide so that we can make those products and services available to our clients. There are so many different roles, and they're all important.
Absolutely. I can't wait for my daughters to listen to this podcast because I've got one that's about to be a senior, and she thinks there's no way she wants to go into this industry. And I'm like, it's all about relationships. You'd be phenomenal. But so she's
Send
going
her
to
to
listen
me.
to this.
Right.
I'm going
Listen,
to.
She
She's
can
coming to you.
shadow. She can come here. We'll give her all the good, the bad, the ugly. That's the most important thing is we have to give it to our kids real. And
Totally.
to let them know that there's lots of different ways to optimize the gifts that they've been given.
And I'm a man in this industry, and I will tell you, we need more females in our industry.
Yeah,
we
so
need
we
more
do.
Patty Brennans
It's
do.
all-
and
Only-
Kirsten Pickens.
Yeah,
Thanks.
there's only about 13% of us.
I know.
right?
It's actually very sad.
And it is sad
And it's
because
surprising.
right. It's been that way for my entire career. I remember going to conventions, guys, as pregnant as could be, and the person I was sitting next to thought I was the spouse. And when they found out that I was the advisor, they literally, I'll never forget it, the guy said to me, "What are you doing here looking like that?"
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine?
No.
And I was just there to learn. So, this is a fantastic industry for women because it does provide flexibility. It does provide opportunity. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
So much fun. Speaking of fun, I really enjoy your podcasts.
Thank you.
You've got over 100 of them. I've been listening to. I haven't listened to all of them yet, but I've tried to listen to a lot. And I'm just curious. I mean, that's something that you guys launched. Was that 2 years ago? 3 years ago?
I don't even know how many years ago. It seems like forever. I will tell you that it was just kind of one of those sporadic things. Bernadette and I were at a convention, and somebody was talking about how easy it is to launch a podcast program and encouraged us to go on our cell phones. And she and I, of course, did it. We tried it during the breakout session, in between breakout sessions. And here we are today.
That's great.
So for whatever it's worth, if anybody's interested in launching a podcast, don't think about it. Just do it. Just start and recognize that the first 10 or 12 podcasts you do are going to be cringeworthy.
I hope not this one.
Yeah. Well,
us.
that's what it is. We learn.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just start. For me, and I'm just going to say this from my perspective and my experience, we don't have the Patti Brennan Show as a prospecting tool. It's really a tool to educate our clients. It just so happens that it's now being shared to hundreds of thousands of people, and that's awesome. One of the unintended benefits of having this podcast, though, was that it's really been a great way to develop my team. Because what's happened is, and I will tell you, we do a bunch of podcasts. I bunch them up. I'll do 4 or 5 in a day, and we're trying to come up with topics, right? And so invariably I'll say, I need to really understand this thing about the budget deficit, the federal deficit. So let's do a podcast on it. It's the old Walt Whitman, quote. If you really want to learn about something, write a book about it. But in my
So
case,
true.
we
Do
do
a
a podcast. And it really has been phenomenal. It's allowed my team, 30 people, to do these podcasts with me. They do all the prep work. We practice it. I correct or I ask them to explore further. And here we are today. So it's really, that is to me the biggest benefit that we get out of it.
But you don't use it as a marketing tool. You use it as an education tool for your clients, which I think is really interesting, which I guess would lead me to my next question is at this point in your career at Key Financial, how are you marketing? How do you bring clients into the fold?
What's so interesting about that is that, we don't really market per se. Like, I think when it comes to this whole business, it's either push or pull. I'm much more interested in pulling. Here we are. This is what we do. If you're interested, give us a call. What's wild about that is we continue to set records every single year for new money. I, as the CEO of this firm, only measure 2 things. Retention. We keep our promises. We take care of our clients. Our retention is like 99.7%.
Amazing.
That's first and foremost. And then I measure new money. We can't control the markets. We can't control this. I don't care about AUM per se, although $2 billion is a pretty good number, right?
Very healthy.
Way beyond anything I had ever anticipated. What I care about is if we are doing a good job, the word will get around. And we set goals as a team. I don't set the goal, they set the goals. And everybody participates here in the new money at the end of the year. And it's a direct derivative of that new money. So last year, the goal was $140 million of new money. What that would mean is that every individual who works at Key Financial, whether you're the receptionist, whether you do scanning and filing, or you're a CFA, CFP, we got a bunch of MBAs here, the whole bit, everybody gets a bonus. That is the exact same bonus. It is a derivative of that new money goal. What's wild about that is last year, I think, and I'm looking at a couple people here, I think our new money was almost $250 million. So everybody got a check.
In
That
an,
was
in,
really
wow,
nice.
in an environment
a
where the
big
market
check.
was down 20% and bonds were down 15%.
Exactly.
So $200 million in a year where
Divided up.
where the classic 64 had one of the worst years of all time.
Thank you for saying that, Ryan. That's absolutely right. And I do believe that for those of you who are listening to this podcast, you advisors out there, if you understand that the most important time that in your career is it's the times when things are not going well, that you can really increase market share. That's what I've learned over all these years. Be out there.
Absolutely. The other thing I just heard and everything that you articulated was just the complete alignment that you have with your team.
We are all on
amazing.
the same team. It's awesome. We have a ridiculous amount of fun here, which I think you guys have
I can
witnessed.
tell.
It's so much fun. And what's really interesting about that is on Friday at 5 o'clock, nobody's leaving. I have a refrigerator stacked with beers and wine, and we're sitting around and hanging out and laughing. It is really interesting. It's just a lot of fun. We work hard. We care about each other. I think that if for those of you who may be listening who run a team, I think that is perhaps the maybe one thing I might have done right, and that is to really communicate the importance of the team, the culture. One year I basically said to everybody, when you walk in, you want to be the reason your colleagues love coming to work. Be the reason.
Very well said.
And it's so awesome. It's really, it just, again, of course, it's me. It doesn't feel like work. I will tell you that that's what I hear from so many of my colleagues here. They don't work for me. I work for them. And my goal at Key Financial is to make sure this is the last job they ever have.
The statement of a true great leader right there. And, you have a ping pong table too, so that's fun.
Absolutely.
I mean, I might want to come back just to go play. Maybe little tournament.
You got it. Absolutely.
All right. Well,
Kirsten.
you have addressed some of this already throughout the podcast, but Ryan and I like to close our podcast with one question, which is, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Boy, that's deep.
I know you could go a lot of ways with that one.
Yes, you can. Especially, okay, so you're going to learn something about Patti Brennan right now. And the advice I would give to her would be, don't overthink stuff. Just, it's just go. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. I'm reminded of a story about a track coach. And this track coach was talking to his very nervous high school pole vaulter. And this poor kid's shaking, and he's looking at this humongous pole vault and this vault, setting a record for his high school. And he took that kid, looked him in the eyes, belly to belly, and he said, "Son, here's what you're going to do. You're going to start, and you're going to start with a step. And then you're going to take another step. And then you're going to run faster and faster and faster. And then when you get to that bar, here's what I want you to do. I want you to throw your heart over the bar, and your body will follow." And honest to goodness, Kirsten and Ryan, that is how I've lived my life. I throw my heart over the bar, and my body just follows. Even as exhausted as it is, which I'm sure with 3 children each, there are days when you're exhausted. You can do this. It's a great industry, a great industry. Keep moving forward. Don't overthink it. get out there
I love it.
and contribute.
Patti, this has been so fun. It's been educational, and we just can't thank you enough for being on Head to Head. Thank you so much.
Thank
Patti.
you, Ryan and Kirsten. This was so much fun. You made it easy for me.
Well,
Thank you.
you're the pro, so this was great. Thank you.
Excellent. Take care now.